You want live, here we go. All right, as usual, I am not even ready to do this. I start these broadcasts without even knowing what I'm gonna say, without even knowing what's gonna happen, and I just roll with them. And I'm doing this kind of as a mental exercise to make sure that I can be ready to do this kind of thing at all times. I always pride myself in being able to speak in front of any audience of any size at the drop of a hat. And I can do that. In fact, I have spoken in front of audiences of 1,000 or more people without any preparation, with somebody just saying, hey, would you like to come up and talk on the stage? And I'll do it. And it usually tends to go off pretty well. But over the last several years, I haven't really been doing that all that much, so I'm getting back into practice doing this, and it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. And the problem with these Ask Mark Joyner live broadcasts is I'm still not sure how many people are going to be watching live, because when I want to do it, it's usually going to be a little bit later in the evening for I just noticed something here. Had to turn on my power. See, these are the things I'm getting right. Now I see my computer's not going to die as we do this. I like to do this around 8 a.m.-ish. Oh, I got a good, good question there already. Awesome. Thank you, Craig Meager. Craig is always asking good questions, always hanging around, always has the positive vibes, and is an awesome MMA fighter as well. Yeah, I like to do this around 8 a.m. my time-ish. I'm going to be playing with these times to see when is the optimal time to do it. You know, obviously this is going to be kind of a dance with the audience. You know, the audience is going to want one thing, I'm going to want one thing, and we're going to figure out a way to do this together. But I do plan to do this a lot more regularly now, hopefully around 4 or 5 times a week even. So I want you guys to come in here and have your questions ready. Now here's the thing, if I don't have questions coming in live, and I'm hoping at some point here that we're going to get such a good groundswell built up with this. Every time I come on live, we're going to have plenty of questions to respond to. But if you guys do have questions and you're not going to be around live, go ahead and send me a private message on Facebook. Now, I am terribly behind private messages, but if you guys put Ask Mark Joyner at the beginning of a message that you send to me, I will make sure to look at that. And by the way, guys, I've got a massive inbox of messages on Facebook that I'm hopelessly behind on, and I will never, ever get caught up on, I doubt. But if you write Ask Mark Joyner, I will look for those questions and I will have those teed up so that in these moments while we're getting started with the live and questions haven't yet rolled in, I will have some of those ready so that I can start answering those questions. Now, I've already got a couple of questions coming in, and that's awesome. But before I do that, I want to say one quick thing. I want to tell you guys about a free Symbology resource you guys can get. It is called the 4 Patterns of Chronic Procrastinators, and you guys can get that by going to Symbology.com/4PCP. That's the number 4, the letter P, the letter C, the letter P again, all lowercase. Symbology.com/4PCP. That's short for the 4 Patterns of Chronic Procrastinators. That is a little comic book that's going to take you about 5 minutes to read, and it's going to teach you the 4 things that are the 4 primary causes of procrastination in today's society. Now, Brad Howard here has a question related to procrastination we're going to get to in a second. So let me answer Craig Meager's question first. Fastest way to $1 million. Well, Craig, the fastest way to do it is to go out and steal it, right? But there are going to be consequences to that. You're probably going to go to jail unless you're a really clever and wise thief of some sorts. Not that I would condone the morality of thieving, but that is the fastest way to do it. So the reason I bring that up is that there are faster and slower ways to do things, but they're not always necessarily the best, okay? Now, the fastest way that I know of to make $1 million that is legal and is okay is to go out and get some venture capital funding. If you have a good enough pitch and you have a respectable enough background and you can present yourself in such a way that the angel investors / VC guys will go out. Anissa says Bonnie and Clyde. That's it, exactly. Anissa is a very old dear friend of mine, by the way, from the old high school eras. Good old friend that I love very, very much, who has been hanging out here on Facebook with us. And it's always such a joy to see her around. The problem with venture cap is that it's always taking your power and it's putting it in someone else's hands. Okay, now listen, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of companies out there that have gotten a great start by being part of that whole community. So in Silicon Valley, there is a network of people out there that will fund startups. In fact, that's their whole business model, is to go out and fund startups and take a risk on those guys. So what they're looking for is do you have a good enough idea? Do you have a good enough plan? Do you have enough drive? Do you have the guts to get in there and deal with the slings and arrows that are inevitable in starting up a business? And believe me, they are inevitable, because you will face some very, very terrible and difficult challenges in your startup. I guarantee you. The great Jim Rohn always used to say, I advise you to become a millionaire, not to have $1 million, but because of the person you will become along the way, because it challenges you, it tests you, it makes you much, much stronger. But most of us fail these tests. This is why there are so few millionaires and even fewer billionaires in this world, because it is sort of like a filtration system to see how tough you are, to see how much of that bullshit you can put up with. Now here's the thing, if you get VC or you get angel funding, that's not money in your pocket. That's money in the pocket of the business. And then you've got another barrier that you've got to get through, and that's that you've got to make that business profitable enough that you're going to end up putting $1 million in your pocket. Now there's a couple ways this goes. You can make $1 million by getting enough profit that you can pull that profit out and put it in your pocket, assuming that you are adequately compensating your employees and paying all your bills along the way and doing it right, not embezzling the money, right? That's going to take a lot of marketing skill. Now, another way that you can become a millionaire through that same path is that, let's say you get some venture capital funding or some angel funding, and then you go public, and then the public splash is so successful that the shares that you own are worth $1 million or more. But here's the problem. That $1 million is not $1 million you can necessarily pull out. Let's say all the shares that you own in your company are worth $1 million. Well, you could cash out right now, but then you're sending a signal to the market that the owner of the business sold off all their shares, and that's probably going to send the shares crashing. So you got to make a lot more. So here's the kind of thing I do, all right? This is the kind of thing I do that puts all the power in my back pocket and not in somebody else's hands, all right? And this is what I would do. I would create a marketing campaign, all right, for a product that I own and that I control. If there's a marketing campaign that I own and I control, I get a much larger share of those profits than I would if I were going the venture cap / going public and all that nonsense path, all right? Because remember, those other paths are making other people rich and not necessarily making you rich. In fact, there are a lot of companies out there that have been started that got venture capital funding that went public, where the owners didn't get any money because some very clever lawyers hoodwinked them out of the money. Now, I've been part of such shell games in the past. I have been hoodwinked in such ways. These people are very, very clever. They are so smart in the way that they organize things and the way that they structure these contracts that you don't find out until you've slugged it out in a business for a couple of years, that you look at the contract and go, holy crap, I don't actually own anything. Or they were able to find some loophole in there that actually took all my value out, and where they were able to take all the benefit and all the money. Okay, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story about that. One of these guys that I worked with, this is back in the early days of online marketing. This was, I was doing I won't say that, I've got to be very careful about how I phrase this because I don't want to actually name the company, but I was selling a company, and this was right when the first .com bubble burst. All right, now when that .com bubble burst, everybody got really paranoid. The day after the bubble burst, I had to give a presentation about this company to a bunch of bankers and capitalists and angel investors at the top of the Bank of America building in San Francisco. Probably the coolest, primest real estate to give such a presentation, and I was so stoked to be up there giving that. But the day before that happened, the crash hit, and man, I tell you, I have never seen a more stone-faced, inhospitable group of people in my life. It was probably the most difficult presentation I ever gave. What was funny was that the presentation I gave there was one of the early presentations I gave about viral marketing. So a lot of people know about my early contributions to viral marketing. Some people say I invented that. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe I coined the phrase. I don't know. I did coin the phrase. I'm not going to answer that question, Dan Clark. I'm not going to say what it was. I did coin the phrase ebook. I did invent the tracking pixel. Viral marketing, I think a lot of people had some contributions in that. I think my contributions were certainly significant and substantial in it. That is exactly what I was talking to these guys about in that presentation. And they were so inhospitable to the notion that they didn't realize the importance of what I was telling them. Of course, these investors did not invest any money in that business because everybody was skeptical. Now, I'm leading up to a point. The day after that, the business partner that I was working with on this particular venture, I got to be, again, very careful about not naming names here because I don't want to be one of these name and shame dickheads about this kind of thing. But one of the guys who was organizing this with us came to me after my business partner had flown out of San Francisco, and he laid a blank piece of paper on the table in front of me. We were in a cafe, and he said, "Hey, I need both of you guys to sign this document, and I know he's not here." Or actually, sorry, yeah, I don't have the story about right. He was about to leave, and he said, "Can you get him to sign this blank document? We haven't actually come up with a contract yet. Get him to sign it, you can sign it, and then we'll fill it in later." He really, really asked me that. He really, really asked me to sign a blank document and had a totally straight face. And my reaction was, no, dude, I'm not going to ask my business partner to sign a blank document. And he goes, I guess you guys don't have that level of trust, huh? Well, I have that level of trust with my people. Man, that's how shady people can be in that world. And do you think that guy's intentions were positive? I'll tell you right now, no. And in fact, some of these same guys that were putting this deal together for us ended up going to jail for a pump and dump scheme that they ran. Okay, so these are some of the many reasons why I don't dabble in that world. I'm not interested in the venture cap world. I'm not interested in the public company world. That whole universe is just so shady and twisted to me that I don't want to have anything to do with it at all. What I want to be involved in is making money myself through the power of the marketing campaigns that I generate. Okay, so I'll give you an interesting example of one time I did this. When I launched Symbology, the company that is my primary focus right now, that has been running for almost 15 years now. It's nice to say there are not many internet startups that last that long, and we've had a great run, and it's getting even better. We're now getting ready to take things up to an even higher level. One of the reasons why you guys see me more frequently now. We're gearing up for some very interesting and very, very cool things. Well, how did I get the funding to start that? I knew that I needed about $50,000 to start it. That is not much startup capital at all, but I'm a smart kind of guy who will start businesses with as little money as possible. Now, by the way, we don't have too many people running the company right now. We don't need that many people running the company. A lot of people say, well, how many people do you have? As if that's some ego marker of how successful your business is. Well, I'll tell you right now, the most employees I've ever had for any of my companies was 80, and it was a nightmare to run. And I'm running a better business now with far, far fewer people than those 80. So how did I generate that $50,000 to start Symbology? Well, I created a marketing campaign. I wrote a really badass sales letter for it, and I asked a bunch of people that were contacts of mine to mail out about it. I said, hey, I'm going to give you a 50-50 profit split. If you mail every time you generate a sale, I'm going to give you 50% of the sale, and I'm going to keep 50%. Within 1 week, I had my $50,000. Okay, so Craig, that is what I recommend, and what that necessitates for you is getting really, really freaking good at direct marketing. You better get really, really good at persuasion, really good at sales, really good at copywriting. If you have those skills, you don't need venture capitalists. All right, you don't need the public company world to come in and save you. You don't need all those people, all those vipers who are like, hey, we'll guide you, we'll advise you to help you grow your business. Okay, now listen, don't get me wrong. Some of those people out there are really good people. There are some venture capitalists out there who are decent, really good people who are looking for quality businesses, and they will legitimately guide you. Okay, I'm not going to name any that I think are good because I don't know any of those guys well enough to be able to say, hey, yeah, work with that guy, because I know for a fact he's always going to treat you well. I can't guarantee that. I cannot guarantee that. None of us can. Even people who are moral in one moment might have some kind of a temptation the next day that will lead into a moral failing of some sort. All right, so personally, I like to have all the control in my own hands, but what that means is getting really, really good at sales, direct marketing, copywriting, all of those skills, okay? And then you've got to get really good also at managing your teams, and you've got to get really good at managing your own energy levels, all right? That's the best answer I can give you, Craig, and I know it's not an easy answer. It's not the answer people want. Everybody wants the quick fix. They want the hack, but there are some things in this world where hacks are appropriate, where shortcuts are appropriate, and in fact, I'm always looking for them. In fact, that's the entire nature of what Symbology does, is it helps you find the most efficient way of doing things, but it is not a substitute for you building up the strength of your will and you getting better and better and better at the skills required to run a business and make it thrive. That is what is going to give you real and true freedom. Now I'm going to scroll back up here to some of these other questions. All right, so Brad Howard asks, I find that procrastination isn't always bad. Sometimes it's a cue to think. Maybe, brother. Maybe. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but that is a very, very slippery slope, okay? Because every time you tell yourself, well, it's okay, I'm procrastinating, I'm just thinking, that might turn into a habit on your part, okay? So what I like to do, if I need to think about something, I'm going to spend time deliberately thinking about something, all right? I'm going to deliberately think about something. Now, by the way, I think we're almost out of questions here, so here we go. We got there's another one down there. But guys, if anybody watching, don't be shy to ask questions, guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, I will see all those questions. The YouTube questions will come in a little bit slower. The Facebook questions will come in a lot faster. The Periscope questions I haven't quite seen yet. I haven't even really pushed out Periscope at all. I don't even have much of a following on that yet, but I got to build that up. But if you guys are on any of the Facebook channels, be it my personal page or the fan page, I will see those questions almost instantly as they come in. So load those questions up, guys. If you want in this round for me to answer your question, you've got a good opportunity now to hear the answer. All right, so Brad, I would just, again, be really, really cautious about that. And if you do need time to think, set aside deliberate thinking time. Don't fool yourself that spending time on Facebook or watching YouTube videos, most YouTube videos, some are very educational and useful, or watching Game of Thrones, which hey, I'm a Game of Thrones fan too. I try to watch very little TV, but I love the show, even though it went downhill after season 5. Damn it! But I don't tell myself that is thinking time. Okay, sometimes that's decompression time, but you got to be careful about that decompression time too, man, because the decompression time can sometimes program your mind. All right, the television screen, or now the computer screen, whatever screen we're watching when we're watching entertainment come through, is the perfect medium for hypnosis. And I think we were talking about this yesterday. There are messages coming through a lot of these videos that we're watching that are not always in our best interest. Sometimes there are ideological and marketing messages that have been deliberately implanted into our popular culture. And again, if you think that that's conspiracy theory and that that's not true, I'm here to tell you it's flatly not, you're wrong about that, okay? It's historical fact that there are people paying money to get messages inside entertainment to change the way you think. And if you don't think that's true, take a deep dive in there and figure that out. Okay, there is plenty of evidence to show, and it's pretty unequivocal at this point, that that is a real phenomenon, and I think it's happening way more than you think, and probably some of the sources that you don't expect. Okay, and that's all I'll say about that. It is everywhere, so be very careful about how you are using your leisure time. And especially, I'm not a parent, so I don't really have any business advising parents in this kind of thing. But as a guy who understands a thing or two about psychology and how the mind works, if I were a parent, I would be very cautious about the entertainment I am allowing my children to be exposed to as well. Because man, it can send your life careening off in the wrong direction if you are not careful. But Brad, I think in general you're right about that in one sense, but be very cautious about how you think about that. Okay. All right, so Brad says, how do you avoid the I'm thinking procrastination versus deliberate thinking? What do you consider the difference? Well, very simply, the avoiding procrastination is stuff that you are not choosing to do most of the time, right? So it's usually like, you went on YouTube, to check a message, and then you saw a link to a video, and then you got, boom, distracted, okay? Or maybe you even told yourself, well, I'm just going to kick back and watch some videos for a little while. All right? That video time is not thinking time, man. The thinking time is one of two things in my estimation. So for me, I do it in one of two ways. So one way is I will put myself into a deep meditative state. If you are not a practiced meditator, you can use what is known as binaural entrainment. Now there are binaural and isochronic versions of these sounds. Now the basic premise of the technology with binaural entrainment is that you play a sound of one frequency in one ear and then a sound of another frequency in the other ear, and whatever the difference is between those two sounds. So let's say, for example, it's 18 hertz here and then 14 hertz here. Well, that 4 hertz difference, your brain will entrain into that frequency. Okay, so the dominant brainwave pattern will go around 4 hertz. And this is a very well observed phenomenon. And I have experimented with it so many times from when I was a very young man. I credit a great deal of my creative power to using tools like this. Now, why is that important? Because our current understanding of the brain right now is that different brainwave frequencies correlate with different states, right? So for example, the 0 to 4 hertz range is the delta range, and that tends to be deep dreamless sleep. Between 4 and 8 hertz, that is the theta range. Now, theta range is associated with dreaming sleep or with a transcendental state that you might get yourself into, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, the 8 to 12 hertz range is the alpha range. Now, that is a very relaxed, conscious state. I found that to be very useful for learning, for just general relaxation. And then 12 to 16 is the beta state that most of us are in when we're like in our drive. Like if you're fighting a fight, you're probably in a beta state. Now there's a lot of debate as to whether when we're conscious, what's ideal? Is it alpha or is it beta? Where should you be? It's hard to know. And to complicate things a little bit more, there are even all sorts of different ranges out there, like the gamma range, that we're very unfamiliar with at this point. We don't really know what the gamma range means. The Dalai Lama thinks that the gamma range is the range that he and his fellow master monks get to with all of the years and years and years of practice they try to get to. Some people think that that is a very heightened state of like super awareness. That's what the Dalai Lama believes, and he has challenged people to come up with protocols to help you get to the gamma state. Now here's something else that makes it a little bit trickier, all right? You're not in one particular brainwave state completely, okay? There are parts of your brain may be operating at one frequency and other parts of your brain may be operating at yet another frequency. So as with everything, these things are never as simple as we think they are. This is this is a new-ish kind of a science. It's a newish kind of a field that we're learning about. But with all that said, and I know that this seems like quite a digression from your question, Brad, I'm getting to the answer there. Here's what I have found useful. If I get myself into a theta state, I'm usually in some kind of, I'm not necessarily in a waking consciousness, but I'm in a sort of like semi-lucid dreaming kind of a consciousness. And that state has been very, very helpful for me in drawing inspiration from whatever it comes from. Now, some people think that it's part of your brain, it's part of your unconscious mind. I don't actually believe that. I think that our consciousness extends beyond our brain. I think we are connected to at least some kind of an information field. Perhaps, to a certain extent, our brain is receiving information. Again, this is kind of, weird fringe science. Nobody really knows for sure, but some people think that there is not even any real evidence that consciousness really exists in the brain. Okay, but what I believe and what I feel is that when I get into a state like that, I am tapping into some kind of a field out there and information comes to me. Now, let me give you a little bit of evidence to show that perhaps my saying this is not completely baseless. Okay, I'm a guy who has written a couple of his books in one sitting, in one day. Okay, for example, The Irresistible Offer, probably my most commercially successful book. It's in universities around the world right now. It's in print in 25 languages. I wrote that book in one sitting in one day. How did that happen? When I was meditating, the idea for the book popped into my head and I felt like the whole thing was there, complete. It's a very strange, I don't know if I can explain it to you, but when I sat down and I wrote it, I had one very, very caffeinated, focused day at a cafe in New Zealand. You guys can read about this if you guys go to the Symbology.com/blog. That's where the Symbology blog is. Again, that's Symbology.com/blog. Type in the Everyman's Superpower. Okay, there is a 4-part blog post series that I wrote about in there explaining to you how I did that. Okay, but I'm telling you a little bit more of the backstory. What I don't talk about in that blog post is where I got the ideas from, but what I did talk about was how I got myself to that point and how I actually did it on that day. Okay, now, that's a nice segue to the other kind of thinking. Okay, so some of that thinking is me allowing inspiration to come from wherever the hell it's coming from. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what this stuff is. Again, I'm open to the notion that maybe it's something inside my own mind. I'm open to the notion that maybe our minds are conduits for a larger information field. I don't know. None of us really know. But what I do know is that I experienced that. Okay, and there is tangible evidence in the real world to show that I did that and it worked extremely well. The other kind of focus, the other kind of thinking is the kind of thinking, well, I gotta maybe distinguish 3 things here now. So the kind of thinking that I was in when I was writing was a little bit different. Okay, when I was writing that book, I wasn't quite in that dreamy state. I wasn't quite in that focused thinking state. I was sort of somewhere in between. I was focused on the writing, but I was also in sort of a dreamy state, and it felt like something was writing me. Okay, I know that sounds strange. Do with that information as you will, judge it as you will. I'm just telling you what I experienced. All right, that's that. Now, the third kind of thinking is the other one I was going to get to here, and that is deliberate, what some people now are calling deep focus. All right, when I write a sales letter, sometimes I have to really get in there and analyze things. Okay, that conscious analysis is what the great Eugene Schwartz talked about when he was talking about teaching people how to write good copy. All right, he said that great copy comes from analysis, and that now analysis comes from understanding the product, understanding the market. Now that is not a passive thing. That means that I have got to consciously get in there and look at that. Okay, what is this product actually? You know, what is different about this product? What is this market? What do I really understand about this market? And how do I create a connection between the most sellable part of this market, of this product, and this market? And that's what the copy is. Okay, and the most important part of that is the big idea. Coming up with that big idea comes from a combination of all of these things that I'm talking about. Okay, so the first step is usually that analysis, right, where you understand the product, you understand the market, and now you've got to come up with a big idea. Well, once I've done a lot of analysis, and if a big idea doesn't pop out of all of that and come to me, then I will get into a meditative state, and sometimes during that meditative state, that big idea will pop into my head. In fact, more often than not, that's how a lot of my really, really great ideas come to me. Some of my best ideas, some of my best, most persistent marketing campaigns have come through that process. I'll give you one really, really good example. Is this thing called the little calendar that brainwashes you. Okay, and in fact, if you guys go to the Symbology blog here later on, well, it might be just in a couple hours here. It might be live now. I'm not sure if my guys put it live yet, but we just created a special version of that. We've been running that campaign now for, I think it's 4 years, 3 or 4 years, over and over and over again. I came up with that concept through that combination of analysis, understanding the product, understanding the market, and then through meditation, that idea came to me. So I was in a meditative state. And by the way, I often do that kind of binaural entrainment or isochronic entrainment, brainwave entrainment technology when I'm out in the sun in the middle of the day. And then I'll snap out of it, and this idea will be there, and I'll get on my phone and I'll write it down, and I'll pop it in my Symbology dream catcher. That's why I have the dream catcher on my phone. That's why we have multiple ways of you putting information in your dream catcher, because sometimes we don't have control as to when these ideas will come in. Now, Brad, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that distinguishes all of that from that kind of procrastination that is involved in outside influences. Everything that I just talked about, you're not going to get any of that benefit from watching YouTube videos. You're not going to get that from being distracted on Facebook. You're not going to get it from being distracted on anything. That kind of procrastination is absolutely not going to give you any of those benefits, at least from my experience. If it works for you, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. I wish I could be like that. I wish I could just goof off on Facebook all day and watch goofy videos all day and have those ideas coming to me. I also wish I could be buff and strong without having to bust my ass in the gym too. But that ain't the way the universe is designed, as far as I can tell. I think the universe rewards really, really hard work, and I think it rewards focused concentration that is deliberate for a particular purpose. Okay. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down, guys, to more of these. Yuan asks, who I just met here recently. He was out at a presentation I was given, in fact, in this very house just several weeks ago. He asked for recommendations for that sound technology. Just about any one of the ones out there are pretty good, bud. And in fact, there are even software programs out there now that will allow you to generate your own brainwave entrainment sounds, which is really, really exciting and wonderful. Rather than recommend any particular one, well, there's a company that I do recommend that has some interesting ones. iAwake Technology, which is run by a friend of mine here. I don't know if he's going to be watching this. He's got some really good ones. But there are a lot of free ones on YouTube and stuff too that you can listen to. All I can say is experiment with those and see how they feel. But you kind of need to practice with them quite a bit. When I started playing with this technology when I was very, very young, I didn't get the effect immediately, but I was persistent enough to where it finally started kicking in. And what I can tell you is that once I started being able to consistently get into a theta wave state, my creativity exploded. It exploded. I got to a point where I was, I remember the first time that this happened to me, that week, I had this notebook with me and I was walking around and I had to keep stopping everywhere I was because all these ideas kept coming to my head and I had to keep writing them down. And it just felt so wonderful. And that is kind of how I am now. I mean, the ideas are constantly flowing into me, and I think that is partly due to my practice of getting into deep meditative states like that. So Craig says, it's remote viewing, unlimited universal intelligence like all the greats who came before us in this holographic universe. Perhaps so, man. I mean, I'm not going to discount any of these theories. There are a lot of people out there who will get in there and say, oh, the consciousness is in the brain, 100%, we know it for a fact. I'm sorry, bullshit. You don't know that. You don't know that. And any scientist who gets out there and tells you things are matter-of-factly one way or another, I don't respect those people as real scientists because they're not looking at actual scientific history and understanding how our view of things evolves. The best we can say is our current understanding indicates that perhaps this is what is really going on. Okay, I think that's the best we can ever say about anything, because even when we're talking about Newtonian laws, we know that there are exceptions now. There are certain contexts in which Newton's laws of motion do not apply. For example, at the subatomic level, Newtonian physics do not apply at the subatomic level. So when people come out and say, well, they're called laws for a reason. I remember one actually very extremely educated guy got into a knockdown, drag-out fight with me about that, and I held my ground. I wasn't going to be intimidated by his PhD coming in and telling me, well, they are laws and that's that. I gave him that exception, and he didn't really have any answer for that. And he also wouldn't concede, which is another thing that indicates to me that is a marker of a bit of let's just say I don't want to say an unkind word there. Let me just say that he needs to broaden his view a little bit. He needs to loosen up his view of what reality actually is and what science really means for us a little bit. All right, let me see if there are any more questions, guys. I think that is it for questions. All right, if there aren't any more questions, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to yammer here for a minute, give you guys a couple other chances to get some more questions in. But thank you guys for all these questions. I'm enjoying these every time I do this. And let me ask everybody watching, guys, share this video if you would, guys. Share the video. I want to get more and more people participating in this on a day-to-day basis. I want to turn this into a groundswell because I think that there are some really interesting things we can talk about. And the more people we get involved in it, the more fun it's going to be. So I want to ask everybody right now to go in and click share on this video, if you would be so kind. I know everybody on YouTube and on Facebook and all that, I know they do that. They tell you, oh, like, subscribe, whatever. I'm going to do that today too. I'm going to ask everybody, please go out and share, just because I want to get more people participating. And if you didn't like what we're talking about today, that's cool, don't share it. But if you loved it, please share it, because I want to turn this into a big groundswell. Because I think, and by the way, guys, I'm kind of leading up to some interesting things here that I haven't mentioned yet that are going to be really, really cool and exciting. And it's going to be more cool, it's going to be more exciting if we get more people involved. All right, Kenny Quo came in and he asked, how do you avoid sunspots and hyperpigmentation when you're in the sunlight? Aha, I remember you asked me that privately, and I asked you to come in and ask me that live. Thank you, buddy, for remembering that. Well, here's the thing. I don't do anything deliberately to avoid sunspots and hyperpigmentation. In fact, I probably have a few, right? In fact, I have a spot of hyperpigmentation that's just natural on my lower lip. Now, I don't know, I might have, there are a few other, like, you know, but I've always been a little bit freckly, right? You know, ever since I was a young kid. So I don't do anything deliberately to stop that. I don't do anything deliberately to stop that at all. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea to go in there and try to stop it. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that do glutathione injections to lighten their skin and whatnot. I'm not sure how good of an idea that is either. I've done glutathione injections for the antioxidant effect. You know, if I feel like, you know, for example, in the rare case where I drink, and I don't drink anymore at all now. I think it's been, well, I think I had a couple glasses of wine over the Christmas holiday this last year. That's the only booze I've had in years. I do it so rarely, but if I do, I might do some glutathione after that to sort of clean up the liver a little bit, right? But, you know, people rubbing these creams and stuff on their skin to do away with that hyperpigmentation. How good of an idea is that? I'm going to tell you why I question it, because the pigmentation that you have in there, that is your body's natural process of responding to the sunlight. It is your adaptation process. You know, your body is constantly moving towards homeostasis, and if the environment you're putting yourself in is a one of more sunlight, your body is responding by creating you know, more melanin, okay? So, and I know that especially in Asia right now, there is a big trend for people who want to have their skin lighter. I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. For me, I'll just talk about, you know, when I look at women, the shade of their skin has absolutely nothing to do with my attraction to them at all. I tend to like exotic women in general, so maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask. Maybe people who like, there are people out there who like light-skinned women, but for me, you know, it's more about their fitness, their overall proportions, you know, the attitude and the energy that they have. How exciting are they to be around? How stimulating are they to talk to? How positive is their energy? Okay, the shade of their skin doesn't matter to me at all. And I've seen some really, really hot, freckly girls too, by the way. Okay, so Kenny, I don't do anything to avoid hyperpigmentation. And so far for me, I mean, my skin tone is generally pretty even. Yeah, I got freckles, like, you know, maybe you can see on my arm, you know, I got you know, a couple freckles, you know, here and there. There's probably a couple freckles on my face, but my skin is generally pretty damn healthy. Again, I don't believe that that skin cancer is caused by overexposure to the sun. I think perhaps it might be caused if you go out there and again, this is total bro science, guys. You know, there is some scientific evidence to support what I'm about to tell you, but the mainstream medical community tells you wear sunblock. I don't wear sunblock at all. I think it's a bad idea. I also think sunglasses are a bad idea. I think those things are actually what's causing the skin cancer. And that's my kind of bullshit random hypothesis. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're wearing sunglasses, you're interrupting your body's ability to respond to the sunlight. You're getting the sun on your skin, but the photoreceptors are getting a different signal. And I think that makes us maladapt to the sunlight. And I think that's where the skin cancer is coming from. And I think quite possibly some of the chemicals that are in those goddamn sunblocks could be what's causing the skin cancer as well. Go in and look at some of the research that shows that some of the people that have the lowest levels of skin cancer are people like lifeguards and surfers. Okay, these are the guys who are in the sun all the time. Okay, so Kenny, that's kind of a long-winded answer for that. I would not worry about that too much, man. And by the way, if you're concerned about that for general attractiveness, let me tell you, one man to another, what's going to make you attractive to a woman. You know, women are attracted to looks. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. But I'm going to tell you what trumps looks for women. It is your confidence. All right. It is your certainty in who you are. It is your drive. It is your unwillingness to be deterred by other people. I've seen very, very unattractive men be extremely successful with women because they had so much legitimate confidence and legitimate swagger. Now, I'm not talking about the bullshit guy who's acting tough, you know, who's got what, you know, Kelly Starrett calls the fabulous man posture, right? You know, which is a very unhealthy way to carry your body. Those people, Anissa says, sense of humor. Sense of humor is also very attractive to women. These things are way, way more important. Okay, and I'll just tell you right now, we're getting a little bit personal here, right? You know, I have had, you know, some women, you know, who will give me a hard time about my my bald head, right? And I just laugh at them. You know, they'll say, "Oh, you're so bald," and I'll just laugh and I'll say, "Well, here you are talking to me anyway." Right? And they laugh and they know that's what we're doing there is we're giving each other a little bit of a subtle communication. She is testing me to find out if I'm going to be a little bitch about it. Okay, if I'm going to be like, yeah, I am bald. I hope you like me anyway. God, ugh, it's disgusting, right? No woman's going to be attracted to that. But when I get in there and I'm like, well, you're talking to me anyway. You must be all right with my bald head. She's going to love that. All right. Now, there's some women out there who don't like bald men, and there's some women who've even told me that, who are not attracted to bald men, but because my swagger is so strong and my confidence is so strong, it's going to trump all of that. And that's the real key, man. And I'll tell you what, that's the key in everything. It's even the key in business. If your energy and your will and your confidence can be stronger than the other guy, it creates what's called the reality distortion field. This is what guys like Bill Clinton, whatever you think about him, and Steve Jobs, whatever you think about him, this is something that they had. Their confidence was so strong that people could even go in there hating them, disliking them, but man, they're irresistible because their confidence is so strong. So Kenny, if that's why you're concerned about that, that's the advice I would give you, and it has certainly worked out, you know, pretty well for me. You know, I've been a single guy for the last, I guess, going on 7 years now, and that attitude has worked out pretty well for me. All right. Let me see if there are any more questions coming in. I'll just say a couple things before we close up. I don't see any more questions coming in, but let me just reiterate a couple of the resources I talked to you guys about. You guys can go to Symbology.com/4PCP. 4PCP, that's the number 4, the letter P, the letter C, the letter P, short for 4 Patterns of Chronic Procrastinators. That is a little comic book that we put together to teach you how to deal with the 4 most common causes of procrastination. Okay, the next thing is, if you guys want to learn about how I wrote a book in a day, and I've done that a couple times now, by the way, and if you guys want to ask about that more in the next live, I'm happy to talk about that, or anything you guys want to talk about. I hope after me telling you guys about my my feelings about how men and women should interact, you should know I'm a total open book, guys. As I get older in life, I censor myself less and less. I censor my F-bombs less. Sorry if that offends anybody, but man, that's how I talk, all right? And I want to give you, I want to be Mark Joyner cranked up to 11, not Mark Joyner cranked down to 2. And if that means I got to drop an F-bomb every now and then, so be it. Forgive me, mea culpa. But you know, my job is to give you the best of who I am and to be out here at full throttle, not censoring myself. And that also means there are things that I used to censor myself about. I probably would not have talked about male-female interactions, you know, once upon a time, okay? Because I thought, oh, people might be offended by that. I don't care anymore. All right, at my age now, I want to tell you guys the truth about everything I can, so do not censor yourselves in the questions that you have for me. Be polite about it, don't be jerks about it, right? I don't want people coming in here getting angry at me. That's no fun. That's going to bring down the vibe for everybody, all right? But ask me anything. I really don't care, guys. I'm totally open to that. Okay, got another question in here. Let me just close up that one loop, though. Go to Symbology.com/blog, and you guys can go just type in the search box there, Every Man's Superpower, and you guys can read that 4-part blog post series about how I wrote that book in a day. All right, Kenny says, what are your thoughts on eating meat as you have shown in recent pics of yours versus being vegan to prevent cancer? Super good question. Okay, now, I don't think any of us really know at this point. The housekeeper just walked in and the dog is so happy to see her. That's what you guys, you all hear in the background there. I don't think any of us really know yet what is causing cancer. We have hypotheses about what's causing cancer, and let me tell you a few of the hypotheses that I am aware of related to your question, Kenny. Now, there are people out there who have had cancer and have effectively treated it by going on vegan diets. And one of the philosophies about that is that perhaps an increase in protein consumption might make you more prone to having cancer, okay? There is some very, very strong evidence about that, and I wouldn't necessarily rule out doing veganism for a short period of time as a cleanse to clean up that cancer. May not necessarily be a bad idea, but let me give you another way to look at this. Not only do I do the carnivore diet right now, I also do intermittent fasting. Okay, now one of the reasons why we do intermittent fasting is because it stimulates two really interesting processes in the body called autophagy and apoptosis. And what those two processes are they are the, and I sometimes mix up the two, so if any of the bioscience nerds out there who can correct me on this, please do so. But I believe autophagy is when we kill the cells and we consume them, right? Because we're regenerating and killing off cells constantly in our body, and then sometimes we reconsume those cells because we take some of the parts of those cells that we can still use, some of the peptides and the different bits and microfractions, and then we spread that out to the body where it can be used. Now, apoptosis is when we go in and we deliberately say, hey, this cell is malignant, we're going to kill it, okay? So, and that is, by the way, how we are killing cancers in our body at our current level of understanding about this, all right? So we all have cancerous cells in our body all the time. A lot of people don't know that. You have cancer now. There are cancer cells in your body, but through the process of apoptosis, we destroy those cells. And guess what? When we do intermittent fasting, we stimulate the process of autophagy and apoptosis both. So there are a lot of people out there who are saying, like for example, Mark Sisson, who is one of the really intense paleo/keto guys. He's got guys who have been on pure keto without cycling any carbs at all for years upon years upon years. And some of these guys are thriving. And one of the bits of advice that he gives to guys who are on carnivore, he's not a proponent of carnivore, but he says, he's not necessarily against it, but he says, if you are going to do it, I strongly recommend you do intermittent fasting because that increase in protein could make you more prone to cancer, and the intermittent fasting is going to give you an edge on fighting those cancers. So Kenny, I hope that answers your question on that. That is a great question. And again, let me just say, none of us really know what's going on with diet here, guys, yet. I mean, we're modifying our views on these things. I think we're refining them, we're improving them, but we really, really don't know. Some of the things that we do know is that eating the processed foods, especially processed sugars, and eating a lot of these additives, these things are not good for us by anybody's estimation. Who knows, maybe we'll prove at some point that there is a way that we can consume these things, but my personal experience has been that they have been a disaster for me, and I believe that there is a lot of evidence out there to support the notion that they are a disaster for everybody. So at the very least, whatever you do, I think eating an all-natural diet is a super good idea, and I also think intermittent fasting is probably a super good idea for everybody, especially for folks who are concerned about cancer. If I were to get cancer, God forbid, knock on whiteboard here, that does not happen, I would probably do some fasting, and I would examine a lot of my habits to find out what I can do to speed up that process of healing those cancers. Now, another thing that you might want to look into is the Warburg hypothesis of cancer. That is the notion that cancer thrives in a glucose-rich environment. And this, by the way, is why even in the mainstream medical community now, there are people that are prescribing a ketogenic diet for brain cancers. In fact, it's one of the only protocols that we know now that is working relatively consistently for brain cancers. So I would for sure probably be on keto. And on that note, by the way, when I do carnivore, I try to make sure that my fat content that I eat is very, very high. Okay, so I'm basically eating steaks and butter, guys, and I slather those steaks in butter. This is something that I would have thought years ago was a really, really bad idea, but I am totally thriving on it right now. Okay, and a lot of people are really thriving on it, and a lot of people are healing certain conditions. Again, it's possible that this is something that's only going to work in the short term. I don't know, but that's what's working for me, and I crank that fat content up so that I can stay in ketosis, because when you eat more protein than fat, sometimes what happens with some of that protein is that it gets converted into glucose, and it might pop you out of ketosis. Now that's something that people are debating intensely right now in the carnivore community. I don't really know the full answer for that, but that is my current understanding. That is what is working well for me in the moment, and I am totally open to modifying and changing that view as I learn more, as we all should be throughout our entire lives, I hope to God, for the sake of all of us. Okay, guys, Symbology.com/4PCP for the 4 patterns of chronic procrastinators, and you can go to Symbology.com/blog, type in Everyman's Superpower to read that 4-part blog post series. I hope you guys enjoy both of those things. And by the way, both of those things are totally free. Yes, it will lead you through a funnel where I will try to sell you things. I'm in business, guys, I do that. But I like to sell by giving people free stuff, and that free stuff that we give away is always of super high value. As I hope you're getting an answer from here. I am not censoring myself. I'm giving you guys the best knowledge I can for free right here. The free resources that we give away at Symbology are of that caliber as well, and they're fun, guys, because we put cartoons and stuff in there, and we make it really, really easy to understand, even for kids. I know a lot of parents out there who give their kids these cartoon books to help influence them, which is awesome. That makes me feel great when I hear those stories. All right, you guys, I had an awesome time hanging out with you today. I hope I will see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow, in the next few days, I might do these a little bit earlier because I have a mastermind that I'm going to. We'll see what time I do it. I can't guarantee, I can't promise. There's this guy, one of the greatest e-commerce minds in the world right now, Steve Tan, has invited me to a private mastermind that he's putting on. He's very honored and grateful to be invited to that. I don't know much about the e-com world, so it's awesome. I'm going to get to hang around some of the best e-com guys in the world, and I'm going to get a crash course in e-com with some of the best, which I'm super stoked about. I'm really excited to be hanging out there. But anyway, for the next few days, the time might shift a little bit, but I am committed to do this, and I will see you all tomorrow. Take care, guys.